Hello, good morning. I hope that you're all well and that you've had a good week. It's been a bit of a mixed week for us here. We've had good days and we've had a few hiccups to contend with this week. One of the good things is that the windows in this room have been finished. There are 15 windows and they've all been done, and the blinds are back up, the furniture's been put back into place, and the room has been cleaned. And I must say that these windows are making a huge difference to our home. Today we're being lashed by rain. It's an awful forecast for the whole day. But do you know what? We can't hear the rain. The double glazing has made such a big difference. One of the hiccups was that the French doors in this room, which are huge, they go from floor to ceiling and are very wide. The builders took out the old doors, and when they went to put the new doors back in, they realised that they'd made a mistake with the specification. So for the moment, we have some temporary doors there, and thank God they're watertight, because otherwise when we came into this room this morning, we would have had a flood because the rain is just horrendous today. Well, there were other hiccups, but I'm not going to bore you with those. Life happens. We will get over what's happened this week. I got a lot of stitching in. Philomena's sampler is almost finished. All I have to do is bring this inner border up and add her surname here. It's been joyous working on this sampler. I've enjoyed every single stitch. Each of the alphabets are very pretty, but this last one was glorious. There's a lot of stitches in each letter, but they seem to work up so quickly, and I found that I was going, oh, I've got to do one more letter before I go to bed. So I did stay up very late working on her, just because I couldn't bear to tear myself away. A few people have commented about the alphabets, and basically she did miss out the J. Now this might look like a J, but it is an I, and on this set of alphabets she got the series wrong. She went G-I-H. Whether she realised and thought that she just couldn't be bothered to correct it, or whether she just didn't realise, I don't know. Honestly, this is just so pretty. I wish I could finish her today, but I have a very busy day today, so I don't think I'm going to get any stitching in. And I've got to have an early night, because tomorrow morning I leave for London to fly to the States for my week with my needlework friends. I do hope that this problem that's affected computer systems around the world doesn't prevent us taking off. I know that a lot of flights have been grounded because of that problem. Fingers crossed. This week, I indulged in some retail therapy. Sometimes a girl has to shop. Last Sunday, I went on to Etsy and I went to Danielle's site. Now, it's always dangerous to one's wallet when you go on Danielle's site. She has so many pretty things, and you know, my collection of her items is quite large now. And I was looking for something to finish the ABC sampler on, and I spotted a set of 2 spools that are very small, and I sort of checked all the measurements, and I can fit my ABC sampler on one of those spools. And I thought, well, what am I going to do with the second spool? And I thought we could have another free online tutorial looking at speciality stitches in the future. So I do plan to do another one in the future, and I will have the second spool on that set for it. Now, there were another 2 items that I really liked, and I thought, no, be good. be good, because there was something else I knew that was coming up for sale in the week that I wanted to get. But as the day went on, my resolve weakened and I went back and ordered another 2 items. One of those was an adorable wooden basket, and I thought, oh, that would be so lovely to use. And for me, stitching is such a huge, important part of my life that I love all the things that surround my stitching. And I thought that basket is just adorable. I'm going to buy it, so I ordered it. And then the next item I ordered, I was very naughty, was another set of spools. The reason why I'm so drawn to these spools from Danielle is that I have a set already, and I have the triple set. And a little while ago, I designed and stitched this. The first one is my name, and the second one is my date of birth. And on the third one, I recorded my home. And both sets of spool holders that I ordered will sit very nicely with this piece, and I'm going to display all 3 on a sideboard top. I think they will look very, very pretty. With my design, this was stitched on 56 count, and I have shared the design with a few people. If you would like to stitch something for this and you're going to use 56 count, if you email me, I will send you the charts with my compliments. And what I've done, I have charted out this font that I use, which is very pretty. It's a very pretty font, and I will share that with the charts for the stitching, so that you can personalise it for yourself. But it will only fit on this if you're stitching on 56 count. You have to have it the right size to fit. Okay, so the other thing I bought, oh my God, the moment that Hobby House shared that they were going to have mother of pearl thread winders, I knew that that was for me. They're just so pretty, and I adore the antique mother of pearl thread winders. But you know, they're very expensive to buy, the antique ones, but these are very reasonable. So I was there waiting for the item to go up for sale, and I bought 2, couldn't resist. I had no hesitation, and I can't wait for them to bring out the next thread winder. I'm going to use them to accessorise my needlework cases. There's nothing like the feeling of opening and zipping the top of a case and opening it, and you've got a really pretty display inside. You like them as well, don't you? You agree that Mummy should have all her pretties for her stitching. Yes, you do. Okay, right, let's focus on today's tutorial for the ABC sampler. Now, last week we looked at the Smyrna cross, which is stitched on this little line here, and then these 4 little stitches are Smyrna crosses. Gosh, the light is awful. It's so dark outside today. Today we're going to look at the little flowers here, which are made up of 4 cross stitches as the centre, and then some long stitches radiating out to represent the petals. Now, I've stitched them as the little girl did, but they would look really pretty instead of cross stitches for the centre as French knots, which we've looked at in earlier tutorials. And then here we have some satin stitches. So that's the focus of this week's tutorial. In last week's Flosstube, I talked about the Berlin lacework, which I wasn't able to complete because I didn't have a thread fine enough to stitch out the background of the lace. I said last week that I had ordered some thread that was used for making flies for fishing, and that thread has come, and it is extremely fine, really, really fine. Now, on the website for this, it said that you could use a marking pen to colour this thread because it only comes as white. I did try to colour it with a Sharpie, but I couldn't get the colour to adhere. So that's not going to work. Now, some of the people who watched my video last week commented on the video with some suggestions for threads, and I also had quite a few emails, and I really appreciate it when people share their knowledge. We all learn from each other, and I've ordered the two threads. One was a superior thread and the other one was a YLI thread, which has come. This one has come. There it is. Oops, there we go. And it is a very fine thread. Now, I haven't tried it out. I'm waiting for the second thread to come. And when I come back from the States, it should be here. And then I will have tested it and we'll talk about this further. Okay, so let's start this week's tutorial. We will start with the flowers. The centres are worked as 4 cross stitches, and then we have straight stitches that form the petals. The straight stitches radiate out from the centre of the flower. I am going to use the space under one of the cross stitches to lay a pin stitch to start the thread for the petals. The order in which you lay your stitches will affect the look of the finished flower. I'm going to start with laying the centre spoke first and then working the 2 side spokes. I do not like how this looks. I'm going to start again, and this time I'm going to stitch the 2 side spokes first and then add the central spoke. It gives the flower more dimension. As I have started to record the section on satin stitches, Hugo has become unwell. I'm going to have to abandon this section of today's Flosstube. I am so sorry. What I'm going to do is insert some videos on satin stitch that I have recorded for previous workshops. Satin stitch. I normally use a pin stitch to start a satin stitch. Tension is crucial when working a satin stitch. The aim is to achieve the smoothest possible finish. This is a stitch that you have to decide whether it suits your needle better to stitch from right to left or left to right when working a horizontal stitch, and top to bottom or bottom to top when working a vertical stitch. You may find that you lay smoother horizontal stitches than vertical stitches. If so, rotate your frame so you are working a vertical stitch in a horizontal orientation, or vice versa. Nothing is ever cast in stone when you work with your needle. I am using one strand of thread, but will make 2 passes. The first pass lays the foundation, and the second pass smooths the surface. If I was working on a different count of fabric or with a different thickness of thread, I may make more than 2 passes. I may only add an odd stitch here and there on the second pass. I trust my eye and needle to decide. Smoothing your satin stitches with your finger or an afficot will bed the stitches down. Padding your satin stitches will give a dimensional look. Padding stitches are laid on the fabric and the satin stitches are then worked over. The padding stitches should be laid in the opposite direction to the satin stitch. Padding satin stitches uses quite a bit of thread. On antique samplers, you can sometimes glimpse inexpensive cotton thread being used as padding, then covered with silk satin stitches. In her sampler, Margaret combines satin stitches and cross stitches. Working a smooth and a textured stitch side by side creates an eye-catching motif. The cross stitch showcases the satin stitch. It's worth perfecting the smoothness of your satin stitches. When working the arcadic band, I would recommend that you stitch the cross stitch outline first, then lay your satin stitches. The way that Margaret lays her satin stitches in this band indicates to me that she was learning how to work this stitch. Note that she has not learnt how to turn corners. How do we turn corners? It comes with lots of practice on a doodle cloth. Think of your needle and thread as a pencil. Use them to sketch out the angles and placement of your corner turn. Do not try to put all the corner stitches into the same base hole. Work back and forth, adding stitches here and there until you are happy with the way your stitches lay. I think Margaret filled in the flower leaves first, and by the time she filled in the vine of the arcadic band, her satin stitching had improved. As she worked her way through the sampler, she was mastering stitches. When she laid the satin stitches in the sawtooth border, she had perfected the stitch. You can perfect the stitch too by practicing. For our practice piece, we will stitch out 6 teeth. We will use straight, vertical satin stitches. Each tooth starts with the first stitch being over 1 thread. Then each thread thereafter increases by 1 thread until we reach the 14th stitch. As we work back down the tooth, each stitch decreases by 1 thread until we reach the 14th stitch, which will be over 1 thread. The 14th stitch on the incline becomes the first stitch on the decline, and the 14th stitch on the decline becomes the first stitch on the next incline. As we learnt when we stitched out the blades of grass, always stitch in the same direction. Use one thread and make repeated passes to achieve the desired coverage. To ensure a smooth glossy surface, disregard any thread that shows sign of fraying or fluffing up. Never be tempted to use a surface satin stitch to save thread. They never sit so well. If you are stitching your sampler on a low count, you may wish to make a second pass to add extra coverage to this row. Fabric. I found that when working satin stitches on 37 count with d'Alger, to achieve the coverage that appealed to me, I needed to lay 2 threads. However, I never work satin stitches with 2 threads on my needle. I prefer to use 1 thread and make a second pass. When stitching a reversible sampler, I would make 2 passes on each stitch before moving to the next stitch. Before starting your satin stitches, you need to decide on the coverage that appeals to you. Stitch out a test area. On a reversible sampler, you need to think about the angle that your needle travels through the fabric when laying satin stitches. You do not want your needle catching a previously laid thread, and you do not want to be constantly turning your linen over checking. You want to be able to trust your needle and the stitch path without looking. We all stitch slightly differently. Some stitch with their left hand and others with their right hand. How you stitch affects the angle in which your needle enters and passes through the fabric. I stitch with both hands, with my dominant right hand under the fabric and my left hand on top. Therefore, I work from left to right when laying satin stitches on a reversible sampler. If you work with your right hand, you might find it better to work right to left. You will not know until you stitch out a test area. Also remember that you can turn your hoop and frame around to change the angle your needle enters the fabric. Experiment on a doodle cloth or in the margin of your sampler. When stitching reversibly, I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to ensure that every single stitch on the front has a corresponding stitch on the reverse. Remember that when ending a thread in a run of stitches, you need to note exactly where the last stitch was made. You must start your next stitch in the same place and at the exact same stage of the stitch, so that there is no break in your stitch path. We have not finished the run of satin stitches until the last stitch is laid on the underside of the fabric, so your needle will be on top of your fabric when you are finished. To secure the thread, I run the thread under a group of satin stitches, and as an extra step, I take the thread to the reverse and run the stitch through another group of satin stitches before snipping off the thread. During the recording of this video, I have not turned my work over until securing the end tail. I have trusted my needle. My back and front are identical. Yours will be too if you follow this method. What I am demonstrating in this segment is how to pad your satin stitches. We will resume with this when I return from the States. I had intended to include a segment on working satin stitches on Ada. I was also going to include a segment on working satin stitches with Soie 103. I will now record those two segments when I return from the States.